The exchange begins with an aggressive opening from the Illinois lawmaker, and that tone matters. In congressional hearings, members technically have limited time to question a witness, but those few minutes are often used less to gather new information and more to establish a political record. That's exactly what's happening here. Instead of a traditional question-and-answer format, the speech functions as a prosecutorial monologue. The Attorney General's brief response and attempt to push back highlights another reality of these hearings. Witnesses have very limited control over the conversation. When a member uses their time primarily for a statement rather than questions, the witness can only respond if allowed. That's why you see the procedural back and forth about time and recognition. It might look chaotic, but it's actually governed by strict rules. Each member gets a set amount of time. The second part of the clip introduces a different angle, the Attorney General pivoting to criticize the lawmaker's own political decisions. That's a classic counter-strategy. When under heavy attack, officials often try to shift the conversation by questioning the credibility or actions of their accuser. In this case, the focus turns to a local election decision and whether it raises ethical or legal concerns. This move isn't random. It reflects a broader tactic in political communication.
You finally made it here after hiding for 4 months from this committee. I understand why you're hiding from us.
Chairman?
You're one of the worst attorney generals in our history and an instrument of Donald Trump's lawless authoritarian agenda, and I'm glad the American people are seeing who you are, how you act, and the lack of good values. You weaponize the Department of Justice to target immigrants, working families, and anyone that Trump deems an enemy of the state, all to protect real powerful criminals, including in your administration. My Democratic colleagues have focused on your cover-up of the Epstein files and your passion for protecting pedophiles and child traffickers. That alone is grounds for impeachment. But there's so much more to your corrupt tenure as Attorney General. You directed prosecutors to investigate elected officials in welcoming jurisdictions, and you got thrown out of court when you sued Chicago, Cook County, and Illinois. You directed prosecutors to prioritize low-level immigration cases while gutting enforcement against corporate criminals and public corruption. You revived draconian law of 1798, which should be repealed to illegally send people to a torture prison in El Salvador. You fired over 100 immigration judges, including the assistant chief immigration judge in Chicago, without cause, and installed unqualified military judges whom you instructed to deny asylum in violation of the law. You prosecute the president's enemies like Jim Comey and Tish James while giving impunity to federal agents who are murdering and brutalizing and terrorizing constituents, including in Chicagoland, in my neighborhood. I saw it last year firsthand. You and Kash Patel covered up the murder of Silverio Villegas Gonzalez in my district by ICE agents. You tried to investigate Renee Good instead of the ICE agent who murdered her, and you tried to cover up the murder of Alex Peretti by CBP agents. You bring fake charges against protesters like the Broadview Six and Marimar Martinez, whom your administration labeled a domestic terrorist. This is the Montessori teacher who lives in my district, while protecting thugs who terrorize us and DHS authority. That's what you do. Protect and enable the criminals who are plundering our society and destroying what's left of democracy and the rule of law. Epstein accomplices, mass DHS thugs, corporate criminals, Tom Homan, Eric Adams, insurrectionists, the list goes on. And you talk about fighting crime, but you protect any criminal who helps you and Trump turn our country into an authoritarian gangster state. And after all this, nobody supports you. I'm not talking about Democrats, I'm talking about conservative judges who are condemning the rampant lawlessness at DOJ under your leadership. Your prosecutors are quitting in droves over being forced to prosecute low-level immigration cases, including in Chicagoland. Your MAGA base despises you because you're covering up the Epstein file. How ironic. And even your own boss has repeatedly complained to your staff about you, calling you weak and ineffective. Weak and ineffective. That's what Donald Trump thinks of you already. You will not win, however. Chicagoland rejects you. The American people reject you. Our communities have demonstrated our strength and resilience in the face of cruelty and cowardice. Democrats must impeach and remove lawless officials like you and Kristi Noem and impose accountability for every criminal action. But you can spare yourself more humiliation. Resign now and submit yourself to accountability by the American people. Mr. Chairman, before I yield back, I ask unanimous consent to submit for the record this Wall Street Journal article dated January 12, 2026, entitled, "Trump has complained about Pam Bondi repeatedly to aides." Thank you, and I yield back.
Objection. Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Texas is recognized.
I thank the chairman.
May I have 20 seconds, please?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Let's hear the opposition research.
Thank you. That's absolutely right, that they're not running for, he's not running for office again because, well, I don't know why you're not running for office again, but after the filing deadline, you publicly announced you would not run when your chief of staff, Patty Garcia, announced and took your seat.
That's a state matter. That isn't a federal matter. You should investigate crimes.
You
should investigate
Time belongs to the gentleman
violations
from
of the law.
Texas. The time belongs to the gentleman from Texas.
A little flexible.